and welcome back to my channel. My name is Natalie from Living the Dream Permaculture, and today I'm going to show you a day in my life. I'm a mum of 3 and I homeschool, but we're in school holidays at the moment, and we live on a self-sufficient permaculture farm. So we grow majority of our own foods, and all I need to buy are things like grains and spices, olive oil, coconut oil, vinegar, sugar, salt, all that sort of stuff. Things that I can't grow here on the farm, and everything else we produce ourselves. Today I have a fairly decent list. I finally kicked everyone out of my kitchen. It's been a mission to get them out the door. It is 10 o'clock, and so I'm a little bit behind on where I'd like to be, but I need to process 2 days worth of milk. So I'm going to make a couple of blocks of cheese. So I'm making Pepato and Romano. So Romano is like a hard Italian cheese, very similar to parmesan, but not parmesan. And then Pepato has pepper in it. So I'm going to make 2 or 3 plain, and then 1 or 2 with pepper in it. I've already got a couple of pepper ones in my fridge. And I've got a few other things to do. I need to pack a couple of orders. I need to process some turmeric. I need to clean my kitchen because everyone's left a mess. What else? We need to go into town. So Paul has been off work sick this week. He's got a cold. And because of the whole, C word that you're not allowed to say anymore, he can't go in. He hasn't got the C word, but because he has the symptoms of the C word, he can't go in. So he's been here on the farm. So we're going to go in together to get the bins. So I often talk about these bins. I show you what's in them as well. This is a supermarket waste that we pick up from a major supermarket in town. So we've got to do that and run a couple of errands in town. I need to get a propagation mat so I can start my spring seedlings in a couple of weeks. So I need to start capsicums and chilies and eggplant. A couple of kids need gumboots because their bears have split and we're in winter, so kind of need dry feet. I need to get some olive oil to make some more soap. What else? And I need to get some more rennet. I have just enough for this quadruple batch of cheese that I'm going to make today. Just enough. So I'm actually a meal short for each pot. Hopefully we still get a good set. It might just take a little bit longer, but let's get started. I need to pasteurize my milk because this is, it's not a natural cheese. It's a cheese where you add in, like yogurt, you're adding a culture, and so that takes hold instead of using something like kefir. So I need to get started on that. So because this is fresh milk, the cream has risen to the surface. Last week you saw me make butter with some of this milk. So I just need to whisk it in to incorporate it back into the milk. And then I need to strain it because this is fresh milk. Sometimes you get a couple of hairs in it or a little bit of mud that was on the udder. And so I have this really fine strainer, which we got from the op shop. It's actually a tea strainer, so it goes inside a teapot, but it's super fine and it's perfect for straining milk. And so I'm just going to strain it in there, and then I'm going to put it in my pot and I'm going to pasteurize it. Now, I don't usually pasteurize milk for general consumption. I'm a little bit of a rebel like that. It is not common. You can't get raw milk unless you have a friend with a house cow. Yeah, so really lucky to have access to this milk and to be able to turn it into cheese, because cheese is basically preserving milk. And here we like to preserve everything that we can't use. So I also make butter with this milk. I still do need to buy butter as well, but if I don't have time to make cheese, or if I have too much milk, I generally make butter with the excess. My preferred way to pasteurize milk is to do low and slow. You can get it up to a really high temperature and you can leave it there for a couple of seconds and it's pasteurized, but I really feel that alters the milk too much. Pasteurizing it anyway alters the milk, but that is why I like to keep it low and slow. So 62 degrees Celsius for 20 minutes, I believe. I just need to double check that once I get up to temp. And then I can cool it down in my sink and bring it down to the temperature I need to start incubating the milk with the right bacteria to turn it into the cheese that we want to make. It is breakfast time. I haven't eaten yet today, and I now have the space in my kitchen to prepare food. And so I'm going to take some time while the milk is pasteurizing to eat my breakfast, which is leftovers, and have some tea. This is burdock tea, and it is really good stuff. I grew this burdock in my garden, and it's healed so many things in my body. Highly recommend it. I mentioned that I have a really long list to get through today, and I most likely won't. I have a Zoom meeting tonight with my students in my self-sufficiency crash course, so I need to be done by 8. I also need to think about making some food for tomorrow because we're going to be in Melbourne, and because I'm eating paleo at the moment, it's hard to get food out on the run. So I have to cook 2 days worth of food. We won't be back until late. So I need to think about lunch and dinner, and yeah, today's as well. I have one of these digital thermometers, one that goes up by 0.01. Did I say that right? 0.1 of a degree. Because when you're making cheese, you need to be super accurate, especially these sorts of hard cheeses. Some of them are easier than others, but this one you need to kind of keep an eye on the temperature. Each batch is 7 litres of milk. If you don't have access, if you don't have access to milk, you can use supermarket milk. So the first time I made this, I made it with supermarket milk. You need to make sure it's unhomogenized milk. That's where the cream isn't dispersed into the milk, so you have that fat or that cream layer on top of your milk. You can get it. It's harder to get. Definitely more delicious. Yeah, if you're going to make this cheese, I'm going to show you how to make it. You need unhomogenized milk. Now, most supermarkets will sell a type of unhomogenized milk. All the milk that you're going to purchase in Australia at the supermarket is going to be pasteurized, so you won't need to do this step of pasteurizing your milk. You just need to heat it up to the first temperature, which I'll show you in a sec once I bring these down to that temperature. So while my milk is pasteurizing and cooling down, I have about half a cup of milk. So this is for a double batch, so you need 1/4 cup of milk per 7 litres with 1/6 of a teaspoon of lipase. So I'll figure out what that looks like. About that for a double batch. So that needs to hydrate for about 20 minutes. So I'll give it a quick stir. So this flavours, I believe this flavours the milk, and gives it that sharp tanginess that you would associate with a hard cheese like this. I need to start thinking about lunch, so I'm going to get a pumpkin soup on because that's really quick and easy, and it's a really dreary day, so it should help warm everyone up. So it's just super simple. I'm just going to saute some onions in some butter. Butter, always butter. Butter just makes everything taste better, and margarine's full of chemicals and stuff you don't want to put into your body. Yeah, that's just a personal preference. And then I'll add in some, I think I'll use some butternuts for this. I don't have any stock at the moment, but I might put in some gelatin just to help, heal the gut, because that's the journey I'm on at the moment. And I might put in a little bit of curry powder just to give it a bit of spice, a bit of flavour. Or maybe I'll use some red curry paste instead. See how I feel. If I put the red curry paste in, I might put a can of coconut cream in as well, and give it that kind of Southeast Asian flavour. Pumpkins is one of the things that I like to grow a lot of in my garden. And I like to grow so many of them because they store really, really well. And that means that I've got a constant supply of food through winter. The really cool thing about pumpkins, when you're growing heirloom varieties so you can save the seeds, is that there's actually 4 different varieties, but let's go with 3 because they're the most common varieties that you can grow. And you can save the seeds from each variety without them cross-pollinating. You have, now I'm not going to be able to say this right, but I think it's cucurbita. So that's the main name. But you've got Pepato, Maxima, and Moscato. They're the 3 varieties. And if you look at your seed packet, you'll be able to see which is which. Now the Pepato, or the Peppo, sorry, that is generally your zucchinis or spaghetti squash, or your squashes. So you can grow a variety of zucchini, let's say Black Beauty or Jack Black or whatever the heirloom variety is called, or Lebanese. Choose your favourite. And then you can grow Moscata or Moscato and a Maxima. So Moscato, I believe, is a butternut, and Maxima is something like a Queensland Blue. So you can grow all 3 of those in your garden without them cross-pollinating, and you can save the seeds. Of course, you can save the seeds anyway, and you'll come up with this hybrid thing. I only learnt this recently, actually in the last few years, is that there's something called cucurbita poisoning or toxicity. And it's when you start crossing varieties, you start getting higher levels of cucurbit, whatever the compound is in the pumpkins, and it's not something you can detox, and so it stays in your body, and then eventually you might get toxicity from it. So if you want to ensure that doesn't happen, if you're eating a lot of pumpkins like we do, saving heirloom varieties is the best way without letting them cross-pollinate. Obviously, if you're living in town and you have neighbours close by, then you'll have a higher risk of cross-pollination. But because I'm so far away from my neighbours here, and I don't think anyone else has a veggie patch, I wouldn't get, would be very highly unlikely for me to have cross-pollination in my pumpkin patch. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, just look at your seed packet and you'll find out which varieties that's my dog, you'll find which varieties you're growing and which ones you can grow without them crossing, because having a little bit of resilience in your seed security, because remember what happened early 2020 when everyone went crazy and bought all the gardening stuff and you couldn't get seeds. If you're a gardener and you're wanting to be self-sufficient, it's an awesome skill to learn, seed saving, because you will save not only a heap of money, but if you don't have to rely on anyone to give you your seeds, then that's just a bigger step in your self-reliance. The best way I find to bring my milk down the quickest is to put it in a sink and top it up with really cold water. So I've got rainwater that lives in a concrete tank, so it's really, really cold at this time of year. And I just fill the sink up until the rivets, because I don't want water to sneak in through those rivets. As you can see, I've got a little bit of milk leaking out there. So if milk's coming out, water can go in, and I don't want to contaminate my milk. So yeah, that's my pasteurized milk. It's been sitting there for 25, I think, I forgot about this one, 25 minutes at 63 degrees Celsius. So you can leave it for 20 to 30 minutes to pasteurize. So I've been talking a little bit about ancestral eating over on my self-sufficiency crash course. So this is round 3 and this is the first time I've brought it up because it's something I've been thinking about lately. I've been thinking about generational eating, what our ancestors ate and how our bodies have adapted to eating that food. So I'm starting to try and cook more Maltese food because my parents are both from Malta. They immigrated many years ago before I was born. and we're Maltese as far back as you can go. So I'm first generation Australian. I mean, I was born here from Maltese parents. My kids are the first kids in my line, and my sister's the same, that have non-Maltese blood in them. So they're half very Aussie, both. If you go back on my husband's side, it's as Australian as you can get, and that's going back to English, Irish and Scottish as well. And so this is the first time that I've, in my line, that there's children without pure Maltese blood. But I've been thinking about how our bodies adapt to certain foods, and I was reading Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon, and she was talking about how Asians have a bigger pancreas and bigger salivary glands, up to 50% bigger, and so they're more adapted to eating grains like rice, because you know, you see rice in their meals from breakfast to dinner, where we're not adapted to eating that much rice or grains in our diet, and our bodies haven't evolved to be able to process it. So I thought that was just a thought that I had to go back to the way that you know, Maltese people ate. Now that's not going to suit Paul, obviously, but it's the food that I know and grew up on, and I'm trying to bring it back a little. We eat a lot of food from all over. I try and cook a lot of Southeast Asian and Indian and Middle Eastern foods and flavors, as well as the Mediterranean style, but I'm thinking to simplify my pantry. You know, back in the olden days, before supermarkets were a thing, before global movement of food and people was a thing, like it is now, we had such a simple pantry and way of eating, and now it's been complicated. And you know, I'm guilty of that. My garden, you know, reflects that, and my pantry reflects that. But can we simplify it and simplify our foods and go back to a more traditional ancestral way of eating? So it's just something I'm trialing. And so today I am making a Sicilian lamb roast. I had a look in my my Maltese cookbook that I have, a very old, it was written early 70s, and it's that traditional Maltese food. I had a look in there, and there wasn't really anything to do with lamb other than a roast, and I didn't want a roast, I wanted like a stew. And so a lot of Maltese food has Sicilian influences, because it's really close to Italy, and also Northern African influences. So I checked out a Sicilian lamb stew thing. I can't remember the name. It was in Italian, and I'm not good at Italian, but it's basically lamb with some tomato paste and white wine, some garlic, and a lot of mint. And I thought that would be really delicious with some roast veggies, and that's what I'm going to create for dinner tonight. So tomorrow we're going to be out all day in Melbourne, and I want to take my own food because I don't want to have to think about purchasing anything, especially anything that's going to suit my needs, because I'm eating paleo at the moment. So I'm packing a couple of avocados for my lunch with a lime, some herby salt, and some homemade paprika powder, which is a little bit spicy. So that's going to be my lunch. The kids are going to, and Paul are going to have corn chips with salsa as a bit of a snack. These are fairly clean. These are organic. They're cooked in sunflower oil. Not the best, but not the worst. So of all the seed oils, that's probably the best choice that I can make. And then I have some organic sultanas. These are really cheap. This company went into receivership, and for 1.25 kilos it was like $6. So that's really unfortunate. They're not covered in oil. A lot of sultanas are covered in oil. These are oil free, so that will give the kids something to snack on in the car. I have some homemade salsa, which will go with the corn chips for everyone but me, and some of these bars, which are just dates, cashews, cacao and coconut. Yes, I could make my own, but I don't have time today, and sometimes that's just the way life is. I'm going to add some more things in there. Like I said, we're going to be gone just after breakfast, and we're going to come back hopefully just in time for dinner. So I'm hopeful that tonight's dinner I can stretch over 2 meals, so lots of veggies will be cooked up tonight to eat with that. Lots of pumpkin. I have lots of pumpkins at the moment, probably some sweet potatoes, probably some carrots because I have a lot of those that need to be used. I'll see if I can find a cabbage and saute that up. And I think that's it for the garden produce. So other things I'm going to add into that basket are going to be some homemade salted caramel chocolate that I made. It's coconut oil, some dates, vanilla, cashews. I've got a kilo of cashews left before I don't have cashews to use anymore, so I've decided that I won't be purchasing cashews for ethical reasons. They cause horrid burns in the women who process the cashew nuts, so that's just a personal choice for me. To move forward, I'll probably use something like macadamias in the chocolate, or maybe almonds or hazelnuts. Hazelnuts I can get locally grown, literally a couple of kilometers down the road. Yeah, so I'll pop some of that in. I mixed through some activated buckwheat. Let me show you. This is a delicious sugar-free snack, and yeah, it's fairly substantial. So instead of just being chocolate, I've got the buckwheat, the activated buckwheat in there, which kind of fills you up a little bit more, and it's full of fats, so fats make you feel fuller for longer. So I'll chop some of that up and put it in the basket, and I might roast some sweet potatoes and pop that in there too, and I think that should be enough, hopefully, to get us through that breakfast till dinner period. And I'll probably get the kids to pick some mandarins from our tree and maybe some tamarillos as well, because that's about the only fruit that's ripe at the moment, unless you want to eat a grapefruit. The kids will eat a grapefruit, but it's probably not car appropriate, so yeah, that's the food done for tomorrow, so that's a big relief. We need to get a roadworthy for our new car because we've had car issues for the last 9 months with the last 3 cars that we've owned. So much fun. So we had to buy a new to us car, and so that's getting roadworthy. While we're in Melbourne, we don't trust the mechanic locally. He's not great. So we're going to see our mate in Melbourne, or more Melbourne than we are. Because we trust him and he's a really good mechanic. So while we're there, we're going to pick out some flooring. Yay! If you didn't see my last video, you'll see what my floor looks like and why. It's just bare concrete. And I'm going to pick up a supplementary Terra Madre order. So I do like a yearly shop, which I shared last week as well. But there's a couple of things that I need to top up. Tapioca being one of them, because I'm eating paleo and tapioca is a prominent ingredient, so I'm using that for the moment to get me through the next few months of eating paleo, where I transition back into a more traditional ancestral diet. And some chocolate making things, because I can't eat my favorite purple chocolate anymore because it's full of sugar, so I'm making my own chocolate. And while I can use coconut oil, I prefer to use cacao butter. It just gives you that chocolatey feeling rather than coconut oil. So yeah, that's basically all I'm picking up, and I'm nearly out of raw cacao, so topping that up too. While I'm there, getting some coconut sugar, because that's more paleo than Rapadura, which is what I use in the kitchen. And yeah, what else are we doing? Might pop into Not Quite Right, because like I said, Murray River Organics closed down, went into receivership, and their stock was bought out by NQR. I'm sure there's some other companies that would have bought it out too, but NQR is one of the companies that bought it out. And they often have organics there really well priced, so I'll go and see what else I can find that's organic, that I can put in my pantry, things that I can't grow. And I think that will be our day out. Hopefully everything goes well, we find a floor and the car is ready to pick up, and it doesn't have to be picked up on Monday because that will be annoying. So the next stage of cheese making I'm going to do on my gas stove. I started it off on my wood stove because I just needed to bring it up to temperature, but I need to be a bit more precise in my temperatures now, and so that's why I'm using the gas stove. So I'm going to attempt to do these both at the same time, and hopefully everything goes okay. But I just need to bring this one back up to 32 degrees Celsius, because while this one was cooling down, this one dropped a little bit. And then I can add my lipase, which is what we hydrated in our cup before. So if you're using supermarket milk, you need to add in a calcium chloride at this stage, but because this is relatively fresh milk, I can just leave it as it is. I don't have it at the moment. If I had it, I would have used it because it is a little bit older than the 24-hour mark, but it should still be fine. I've done it before like this and I've had good results. But if it is supermarket milk, that is much older than this is, and so you will need to add the calcium chloride back in. I'm now going to sprinkle over my starter culture, which is, bend this up so I don't drop it all over my floor. This is the starter culture I'm using, type C starter culture, and it's a little bit difficult to determine how much to use because the recipe calls for one thing, but then this says it cultures 250 litres. Now I don't have 250 litres, so I'm just going to put in about 1/4 teaspoon, maybe a touch more. And I'm going to leave that to hydrate on the top for 2 minutes, and then I'm going to add in my lipase, which are hydrated in the milk, stir it all up and leave it for 60 minutes, and then I can do some other chores while this is all culturing away in my kitchen. One thing I forgot to add is that you want to hold this at 32 degrees Celsius for the hour. So covering it in a towel is really helpful. I've got it next to my wood heater, so that should keep them around the 32 degrees Celsius mark. They came back just in time to unload the dishwasher for me. What have you guys been doing?
Building a hut. Sucks.
The hut sucks? Or building it sucks?
Both.
Not turning out
very
good.
It sucks at the moment, but I reckon it's going to turn out to be a good hut.
Cool. So this is what I said. When you, like last week, when you are self-sufficient, you cook from scratch, you have an endless supply of dishes. So there's my milk buckets that the milk was in, which I'll pop the whey in once the cheese is made, because I want to make whey butter out of the whey, which is just the cream, because the milk wasn't less than 24 hours old. Not all the cream's going to go into the cheese, so I'm going to skim the cream in the whey, and they don't want to do the cutlery, they're racing against the clock. That's not where they go in the laundry. Thank you. So I'll make butter with the whey, and I'll probably have to do that tomorrow because I'll need to wait for the cream to rise to the top. But once the cream is gone, then we can feed the rest of, excuse me, that didn't go in the thing. Oh man. The whey will be fed to the pigs. So it's been an hour and I'm going to add the rennet in. Now this is vegetarian rennet. If I was to have my time again, I would have bought calf rennet, because sometimes vegetarian rennet can be GM, and we try not to have GM in our house. So the recipe calls for 3 mils per 7 litres. I'm going to be just shy of that. So hopefully it all works. It might just take a touch longer to set. So what you need to do is you need to add your rennet in and mix it really quickly, and then stop it after about 5 to 10 seconds, because you want it to be really, really still for the next 30 minutes. You don't want it to touch it or move it over the next 30 minutes because you're going to break the set. And so, yeah, just leave it undisturbed in a warm place. So let's go do that step now. So it's been about 45 minutes. I left it a little bit longer because I had something else that I was getting done. And I'm about to check to see if I have a clean break. Okay, so I'm just going to take my spatula and cut in. And you can see there is a clean break. I'm really happy. that we have a break because I use a little bit less rennet. So what I need to do is now cut the curds. So down like this. And I'm going to do this vertically and leave it for a couple of minutes until I come back to the next step. And I'll do this for both pots. That light isn't the best at the moment because it's a bit of a gloomy day. This palette knife isn't quite long enough. It'll do though. So you want your squares to be about 2 to 3 centimeters in size. Mine might be a little bit bigger than that. Now I really need to move along because we're about to leave, or we need to leave. I'm gonna zhuzh you down. Give me a sec. Okay, we need to get to the supermarket and pick up the waste. So I've got another hour or so in here before this is ready. So what I need to do is get my whisk. See if I can show you. And I'm gonna break these curds up into pea-sized pieces. So do that for both pots, and then we're going to stir it gently for 10 minutes. So I'm going to use a wooden spoon. The recipe says use a ladle, but I'm going to use a wooden spoon because that's what I have. It's already dirty. So I'm going to pop my thermometer back in, and I'm going to raise the temperature up to 35 degrees Celsius, and I'm going to keep it there for about 10 minutes. So now we sit and wait. This takes 40 minutes. We need to raise the temperature by 1 degree every 4 minutes, the next 40 minutes. So this is a long, slow process, but it's important. In making this type of cheese, you want to get as much moisture out as possible, and you want to get the right firmness in your curds. Sorry, the lighting's really bad. There we go. Yeah, so this will be made for the next 45 minutes, 45 minutes. It's pretty boring, so I won't show you too much of it, but it's going to consist of stirring the curds and watching the temperature. We are finally on our last degree that we need to raise it by. So we're at 44.3, we need to get to 44.5. I put some peppercorns on to boil because you want to sterilize them. You don't want to introduce any foreign wild yeast, especially because then your cheese will ferment and then it'll be bad and you'll get sick. I also prepared everything I need behind me to get it into hoops and to start pressing it. Like I said, we're pushed for time a little bit, so I just laid everything out in between temperature rises so that everything will be set to go once this cheese hits 45 degrees Celsius. Dinner is still cooking away. Lucky I got that on early. It was frozen. That's just kind of something I do. I'm really bad at being organised enough to defrost meat the night before. So hopefully by the time we get back, that will be close to being ready. So now we're decreasing the temperature back down to 35 degrees Celsius over the next 10 minutes. We need to keep stirring it because we don't want the curds to knit together at this stage. If we just left it to sit, it would form a cheese at the bottom of the pot, and we don't want that to happen. So I need to keep stirring these and get it down to about 35 degrees Celsius while stirring them. So now I'm letting the curds settle in the bottom of the pots, and then we can pitch off some of that whey, and then we can scoop some of the curds into our baskets. Now, these are the baskets that I'm using. These are for Romano or Pepato, same thing, really. And I just got them from Cheese Links, which is in Geelong, Victoria. And you can get all different sorts of baskets for all sorts of different cheeses. So I'm going to show you how I set up now. So I grab a tray of some sort. So I'm using a Pyrex, dish. And I've got one of my dehydrator trays, but you could use like a cookie sheet or something like that. And this is where I place my molds. So I'll fill them up. And because I only have 2 weights, I'm going to stack 2 cheeses on top of each other like that. So I'll grab one of my wide mouth mason jars. This is a 1/2 gallon or 2 litre. And I'll stack it on top like that to press out all the water. You need to keep it warm while this is happening. You can put it in an esky, but I'm going to leave it on my stovetop next to my wood heater, which will keep it nice and warm. I've also strained my peppercorns for the next step, so that's coming. Once the cheeses have pressed though, I'm going to show you a little trick that I saw my friend do and I thought it was genius. She used skewers. I don't have skewers, but I have more of these trays, so I'm going to place it on top and I'm going to cover it in a tea towel. So, I mean, we don't have flies at this time of year, but if you we're doing this in summer or spring or autumn and there were flies around, you would cover it from the flies so they wouldn't get onto your cheeses. So now I'm just pitching off some of this whey, which is really easy to do. Get a jug and pour it in a bucket or something like that. I'm keeping this whey because I want to make whey butter out of it. See if I'll have any residual cream. It looks like there will be. So I'll let that sit for a few hours and we'll see if there's any cream, and then I'll show you how to make whey butter. So now I'm just filling up my baskets. Now this one I'm making 1 Romano and then 1 Pepato, which is the pepper cheese. So first I'm going to take out my Romano curds because I don't want any of that pepper flavour in there. Fill up that hoop. This is going to press down, so it's quite thick, but it's going to press down quite a bit. Smells amazing. Okay, so I'm going to dump those peppercorns in, give it a good stir. I'm not going to keep any of this whey in here with the pepper, otherwise it'll be pepper cheese, although pepper butter I mean. Although, is that really necessarily a bad thing? So here is the cheese in the mould. I'm going to keep rearranging these ones just to get an even press. And I'll also flip them from the moulds. Now this might fall over, so I'm not going to leave it pressed while we're gone. The big one, the big stack. But I'm going to flip them out of their moulds. Whee! Woo! Got it. I'm going to flip them out of their moulds and turn like bottom side up, if that makes sense. I'll show you when I do it. So I'm just flipping the cheese now, and all I do is turn it upside down on my hand, give it a bit of a tap and a wiggle until it comes out. And then I place my hand on what was the bottom of the cheese and place the mould on what was the top of the cheese and slide it in. And this just gives you a uniform cheese. So instead of being a bit of an angle, which this one might be, just take the weight off. And you need it to stay warm, otherwise it will kind of set and you won't get as much water come out. So that's why I'm keeping it near the fire. But unfortunately I can't keep the weights on it because we're going out. I'm worried they'll fall over. But I'll just keep pressing it down until we need to leave. Like that, and I'll keep rearranging the stacks because there's a bit of weight there.
Mum,
What's up, Zara?
so that's one mould of those mould cheese.
It's not mouldy cheese, this one.
Yeah, just
The mould is what we call this basket.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
How?
Because there's a couple of different things, like mould can mean a couple of different things. Just like you can say I'm going to the shop or I have 2 bananas. It's the same word that it means something else.
But Mum,
Yes.
that's a pepper cheese, right?
This one's a pepper cheese.
And those ones are just plain cheese.
That's right.
That we have. I want to taste it. It tastes so yummy. Mum, I think it's even...
Need to wait for it to be ready.
Yeah, it's even more yummier than the other one.
Now I'm supposed to flip these every 60, 90, 120 and 180 minutes. I'm obviously not going to be here, so we're just going to wing it and do our best with the time that we have because that's how we homestead here. So my phone went flat, so I couldn't film us picking up the bins, but I came back and the cheeses are all pressing nicely. I'm really happy with the way they're going. Dinner wasn't cooked, so that was fun. Shouldn't be far away now. And the whey in that bucket, there was no cream on top of it. So I'm not making whey butter. Just a very tiny amount, so it's not worth salvaging. So with the cheese, keep restacking it for a couple of hours and turning them in and out of the molds. That way you get a nice even cheese. But I'm going to sign off for tonight because I need to jump on and do my Zoom session. But I won't cut the vlog here. I'll restart it again tomorrow so I can show you what to do with the cheese. So if you want to make your own cheese, you know exactly what to do. So tomorrow morning I'll have to soak them in brine and salt them. Yeah, so I'll show you all that tomorrow. Good morning, next morning. Everyone's still asleep and I'm trying to get prepped before we have to leave to go to Melbourne. So I need to make a brine to salt these cheeses. And the recipe calls for 1 litre of water, 250 grams of sea salt. You don't want table salt that has iodine in it. And a 1/4 teaspoon of black vinegar. And we're going to sit the cheeses in there for 8 hours. Now I'm going to be going longer than 8 hours. And halfway through you're supposed to flip them again. I'm not going to be able to do that. So my cheeses are going to be in the salt a little bit longer, which means that they might be a little bit saltier. But as soon as I get back, I'll flip them and then I'll give them another 4 hours in the brine solution. So you want 4 hours on each side if you can, with a sprinkle of salt on the surface. So each time you flip it, you put a sprinkle of salt on the surface. So I'll show you that now. So I've got 750 grams of salt in here because I think I'll need 3 batches of brine to cover all my cheeses. I'm doing my pepper cheese separately because I don't want cross-contamination of flavours. I've popped in nearly a teaspoon of white vinegar in there. I'll be using 1 litre of boiling water to dilute it and then 2 litres of cold tap water to bring it down to temperature. Okay, so the brine is made and we just want to cover the cheeses, or try to cover the cheeses. They will float. It's hard to do one hand. There we go. And so you can see it just went over the top. Might pop a little bit more in because this one's a little bit taller. So now they're both floating. So we need to now sprinkle the tops with a little bit of salt. So again, make sure it's not table salt that's been iodized. It needs to be sea salt, pure salt. And to sprinkle the tops of the cheeses. This will flavour your cheese to an extent. So you've got the lipase in there, which is flavouring the cheese. But the salt, this salt is what's going to make the cheese salty. So we didn't add any salt into the cheese mix. This is the saltiness that it will get. So after 4 hours, flip them. Like I said, I'm not going to be here. So when I get back, I'll flip them and leave them for another 4 hours and salt the surface again. Easy. So we got back pretty late last night. I think the cheese had been in brine for 13 hours, which was too long. But I turned them over and I salted them overnight. And now I've woken up, it's 6 o'clock. So they have been in the brine for an additional 9 hours. So it's the longest I've ever salted a cheese for. But I'm going to turn you around and show you what I'm going to do next. And then finish up the cheese making process. So they are now drying on this rack and I'm going to leave them here for a day. I'm going to turn them a couple of times until they're dry. And then after the day sitting out like this, you can cover them, especially if you've got flies around. I don't have any flies at the moment. I might cover them a bit later. But once you've left them out for a day or two, you can then vacuum seal them like this. And then I store it in my wine fridge because a wine fridge keeps the temperature in there at 12 degrees, and that's Celsius, that is, and that's an optimal temperature for ripening cheese. Leave it in there for 6 to 12 months until the cheese is ready to eat and you have made your own cheese and you've preserved your milk. So I hope you've enjoyed this vlog. It was a day in the life, but we've extended it over a couple of days just so I could show you the finishing steps on making cheese. I'm going to make some more cheese today, same sort of cheese without the pepper. Because like I said, I'm going to use that like parmesan in my kitchen. So when I make something like a lasagna or pasta or something like that, I can use this to season the food, or even a minestrone or minestra. I can use the cheese in there to season it. So I have some more milk in the fridge. I might as well preserve it so I can keep using it. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please leave a comment below if you did, and let me know what else you'd like to see on my channel. Bye.